Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Mr. Ben is going to be available in a few moments, maybe like 15. How did you find the book, Emma?
I thought it was pretty good. I mean, same repeated complaints we've been talking about do apply, but
Well, at least he's consistent there.
there are no new ones.
Yes, exactly. It hasn't gotten worse, so that's a positive. Have you voted?
What did you think? I have.
You have
I voted
voted
the first day before I forgot because I knew I
Hmm.
would.
Very smart, very smart. We have 8 respondees. I think for the next section, most things, like a few books have like 1 vote, a few things have 2 votes, and a few things have 3 votes. So we'll probably just move all the 3s to the next poll.
Next round.
The next round.
It's like March Madness.
The final round. Which books were you looking forward to?
I don't remember now.
You don't remember.
Where's the... Here, let me pull up the list. I'll remember if I look at the list. Oh, I think one of the ones I was interested in was the Kabbalah of Forgiveness. I think I voted for that one.
Uh-huh.
I might have voted for the, like, A History of the Jews one, too. I like history.
Okay. Did you also vote for To Pray as a Jew by Chaim Donin?
I don't think I did, but I wouldn't be, like, opposed to that one.
And then what about Holiness in Nature on the Roots of Life?
Yeah, that sounds right. Oh, shoot, sorry. I'll get that.
Well, hello, Mr. Ben.
How's it going?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. I have a mint, but so if my mouth is moving weirdly, that's what's going on.
It's okay. We know you're a businessman. You're a busy man.
Yeah, I'm busy with my mint.
Yeah, exactly. Is it just the 3 of us at the moment?
I think so. I thought Sandy might join. Jacob is kind of like he's a free spirit, so
Makes sense. That really, I think, encapsulates Jacob.
The non-denominational. He's either Mizrahi, Sephardic, Chabad. You don't know.
Yes, and more. All right. Well, we have Sandy here, the most important person of the book club, as everyone knows.
Yes.
So we can do our introduction. All right. Hello and welcome to the next instantiation of the Jewish Book Club, reading The Great Partnership, Science, Religion, and the Search for Meaning by Rabbi Jonathan Sachs. For this book club, we have read chapters 10 and 11, that being The Meaning of Life and Darwin. For our next book club, we will be reading chapter 12, The Problem of Evil, and chapter 13, When Religion Goes Wrong. Anyone who hasn't voted for a book in the book club poll, it will be ending tonight, and I'll turn off the responses and move the next books on to the final round of voting. So, thank you all for coming. And who would like to start with their first comments?
Sorry, I have no comments. I'm suddenly, not so subtly, dropping a hot water bottle so I can put my feet on it. Oh, because I hurt.
I'm trying to bring my notes up.
So you made me.
I can jump in first. I think chapter 10, there were parts of it I really liked, but there were parts of it that felt really like unpersuasive to me, and I think it's because Rabbi Sachs kind of underestimates or underestimates how helpful it is to like fully inherit your faith with no question about it. Because he keeps talking about how like people do these things that give their lives meaning, not because they've like decided it's the most true or anything, but because it's what they do. And I'm like, that's because you're Jewish and that's the faith you inherited. And obviously, like, I get what he means because I also inherited my faith, but I also at some point very much had to like choose it over everything else. And I feel like for people whose families don't have faith or who like really have problems with their family's faith, his answer won't help at all because you can't just decide to do what your family's always done if that's not there.
It also kind of presumes like a coherent tradition that you accepted, right? Like for myself, my parents were both, Christian, but from different denominations, and that wasn't very helpful to like fully embrace either one. It's like, yes.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I think that might be a real distinction between Judaism and Christianity specifically, because in Judaism, it doesn't matter, as far as I know, at least, but it doesn't matter what you do. You're still, when we think about the Jewish soul idea, it's like you still have that. So that's still your role, whether you want it or not. So, yeah.
That whole idea of having like having that shared concept of a Jewish soul is so foreign to my upbringing too, because that's not the way anything faith related would be described. When I think about this and about what how Emma started this, it really highlights for me that whole Greek Hebrew divide in terms of how you process things, because for me, just thinking about that, it's completely about like my family of origin is all British. You'd think that would be an identity that would bind, but instead half of them are English and half of them are Scottish, and that was so not a means of joining.
That's not gonna work.
No. And then you look at, and then you look at the faith history, and I'm like, I joke about it, but it's seriously was uncomfortable as a child. The number of different outlooks between, Scottish Episcopal and whatever it was that my grandmother was, that was some version of sort of Pentecostal type thing. And, you're Presbyterian, and my grandmother ran Baptist Sunday schools out of her backyard. And I'm like there's just like all over the board. There's no sense of common shared. We just didn't talk about it. You just, you were family because of other things, but this, no, like, yeah.
Yeah. My family had a little bit of that, but there was like one clearly dominant thing because I have one set of grandparents that's Lutheran, and like everyone else in my family was at least nominally Catholic. So it was much more of like there's this coherent family thing, and then there's like they're left out, and it's very sad for them, and like maybe it'll work out someday, but like we still had like this is our faith, especially focusing on my nuclear family because we also those were the grandparents that we just didn't live close to, so we didn't see them a ton, so it wasn't as big a thing.
Yeah, and you also think of like people who want you to have that born again experience in Christianity, and that just doesn't, like, you have to choose, and so it doesn't seem to like work very much with, oh, I just inherit this tradition and it's fine.
Oh yeah.
So where did you get that's his point, that it's you inherited it, and
Where does he talk about this? It's where he's talking about how like it's not the Kierkegaardian leap of faith, it's something else.
I wish I could do like Control F,
Yeah.
but I can't.
Oh, it's right at sort of the beginning, like intro. For me, it's page 213, but I have an ebook.
Oh,
That is not working.
Right when he gets to the end of the like telling the stories of Max and Lewis.
Is it before or after Tolstoy?
Before.
Before Tolstoy.
Are you talking about the
right.
paragraph, their faith did not rest on the principled belief that God created the world 6 days, or the ontological argument, or that the ontological argument was true? They had not read Kierkegaard.
Yeah.
That section.
Yeah,
Yeah, that sort of sets it up, and then I think later on in the chapter he sort of circles back to that point a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But it kind of felt like it set the tone for the like whole chapter.
Right. It says they were religious because that was the commitment their ancestors had made and stayed true for more than 100 generations, because that is how a Jew lives, and because people who live that way are somehow more real, more honest than those who pursue the idols of fame or wealth or success, which always have a habit of coming back and biting you.
Yeah.
Knew their lives seem to say God exists, the universe exists, we exist. What more do you want? There is simplicity in that. Faith I respect. So, if I could just respond to what you said, I think I can see what you're saying, and I still think that's a true idea, kind of from a Jewish perspective too, of like this is your ancestors, and I've heard other people say that as well. But I do think that he has another thing here, and this is kind of the same thing that Peugeot. But I feel like it's similar to what Peugeot is saying with when he talks about the grandma, right? That doesn't understand. That goes to church and doesn't. Sorry, I need to explain. That goes to church and doesn't. Right. So they kind of see. Oh, sorry. Oh, oops. They kind of see. Like Max and the other person, they kind of see the effect more clearly, or it's enough for them to just go on that. They don't need to go into that analytical space that requires, you could call it extra evidence, right? But it's enough for them. So I think that's the second thing that you might be talking about here.
That's true, and it's not like unattainable by any means in like a Christian context. I just feel like he slightly like underestimates how difficult it is for Christians compared to Jews.
I mean, I do think that maybe Catholics have it easier because there is that kind of cultural Catholic thing where even people who leave Catholicism, especially if it's more rooted, they find that they're still very Catholic in the same way that someone who was raised Jewish and then finds that they're still, Jewish in many aspects.
Mm-hmm.
The maintenance of identity comes along differently. I think you said something. Was it? I'm trying to remember because my sister said something to me recently when I was talking about book club and a lot of the Jewish studies I've been doing, and some of the questions I'm having, like we're kind of questioning Christian background and faith and what it means here. And my sister's first response is, but are you saved? Are you still born again? And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I haven't heard anybody say something. How many?
Last night we were talking about how that's such a Protestant response too.
I know. No, it's like, I understand you love me and you're concerned. Can you not just say that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I also think, I think Protestants have the most trouble with this. But I also think that's combined with their idea of hell. But I think that's separate. But it does seem that, like, respectfully, all the rabbi wants to do is pretty much give us, like, he doesn't believe any of the arguments work. He doesn't believe any of the arguments against the problem of evil work. He just wants us to show up, which I feel is like you're giving the atheist too much ground. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, in the next chapter, he seems to like some arguments from design, right?
Yeah.
You're joking, right?
It's an interesting couple of chapters.
Like, he says that, like, it doesn't eliminate all the arguments from design, but he doesn't give any positive reason for believing in design at all. He just says, like, it doesn't illuminate at all. So
I'm trying to think.
Actually, it makes me wonder how he would feel about Brett Weinstein's literally false, metaphorically true framework for religion. Because that's Brett Weinstein's solution to it, is like, all religions are literally false, but if you live as it, like, if you follow the practices of a religion, you do better. So they're true in some sense because they're evolutionarily, like, adaptive and useful.
I mean,
Ouch.
I think that's what he's advocating. I can't think of a way he wouldn't be, I guess.
Well, he still seems to believe it's actually true. He just says he can't prove it and doesn't care to.
So I've heard this from other rabbis also in terms of explaining it how, like Rabbi Gottlieb, I think, who's like very much kind of like an analytical person. But Elijah, you might do better with these arguments. I'm less good at those articulated arguments. But he also kind of points to the fact that it's more the claim, the Jewish claim. If you want to talk about proofs, it's more about probabilities. I mean, there is the revelation. There is kind of like basic axioms or like ground level axioms, but other things like, for example, Sinai is more. It's just like you eliminate all the other options, and then the most probable event is that there was a revelation on a grand scale, and that is the argument. There's no 100% proof. So I don't know if Sachs is alone in that.
Well, I don't think that Gottlieb is doing the same as Rabbi Sachs. I do have a book by Gottlieb. I haven't actually read it yet, but he actually has like proofs in there. Whereas I think Rabbi Sachs would be less interested in those, right?
maybe. I mean, Gottlieb is like he's a philosopher, and I mean that's what he does. But I think he does say, but when you say proofs, I don't think. I mean, I just listened to a lot of his Q&As. I've watched some of the YouTube videos. I haven't read his book, but when people ask him, so how do I know for sure? And he says, there's nothing. There's no for sure. I'm a philosopher. I can tell you there's no for sure. There's no 100%. There's probabilities. And so that's kind of how so if he was giving you a proof, he's probably saying more likely or highly likely or something.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think how to even ask the question. Like when you talk in terms of probabilities, I don't think you're like raising questions. Like you're not questioning in the way that probability might be seen in scientific stuff. Is there a difference in how you would use that concept? It's based on probabilities from the scientific side of this as opposed to the religious side of this? Does it have a slightly different place in context?
Well, I think the way Gottlieb talks about this, I mean, he's using the scientific probability as a scientific tool, let's call it. So he's not really talking from the religious perspective of if somebody's asking him for proof, then that also puts you in the framework of they want a scientific proof or something like that. So that's the only tool he can use to answer that question. So he's not saying it so there's no probability from a religious perspective and a probability from scientific perspective. It's just like that scientific tool to answer a scientific question, let's say. Yeah.
The rabbi trained in philosophy?
You're a little bit quiet, Trey.
Yeah.
The rabbi trained in philosophy?
I can't hear you. Like your mic is somewhere in the vehicle, but not near your.
I think he said something about was the rabbi trained in philosophy or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
Gottlieb has a PhD and Sachs studied, so.
He did?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's because of the timing. Like, it is 2012. We're in the rise of the new atheists, and like you can't really make that much of a convincing argument that way, I guess. But yeah,
I don't think the new atheists raised any new philosophical arguments. They just had terrible rhetoric.
I think Richard Dawkins' point about evolution makes you a fulfilled atheist, pretty much. Like, design is harder to prove, pretty much. Like, if you're with evolution, I think that's a stated fact.
Yeah, but I think that comes from Darwin, right?
Yeah, but right. But I think it was continued into the new atheists. Also, like, you can't. Lawrence Krauss was trying to at least remove the idea of the kalam, pretty much.
Yes. Well, kalam is an interesting argument for sure.
Okay. Anyway.
what's an interesting argument? What's it called?
The Kalam cosmological argument. I think Maimonides writes in his Guide to the Perplexed against people who do Kalam, and yeah, it's an interesting argument, but I don't know. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, I mean, Gottlieb talks also about like the arguments about the distinction, not distinction, but the contradiction between the evolutionary theory and the religious view. I don't know his arguments well, but he also talked about this.
Gottlieb's very Haredi, right? So, Rabbi Sachs is more like modern Orthodox, and Gottlieb is much more, Haredi. So I think Gottlieb is probably going to be more like, no. And Rabbi Sachs is saying like, yeah, sure, I believe in evolution, no problem.
I was kind of surprised by, when we get to the Darwin chapter, that really surprised me.
Anything else in the meaning chapter then? Because it seems like we're going. Well, one thing I found interesting, at least in my book, it's 187. It says the faith that Tolstoy arrived at was not a conventional religiosity. He was highly critical of the church. He believed it had not kept the faith with its original mandate. He developed his own idiosyncratic Christianity, but he became a changed person, a homo religios, a man of faith. I thought it was interesting that Rabbi Sachs kind of views homo religious as like a high state, whereas in the previous book club, right, Rabbi Soloveitchik kind of viewed homo religious as like the lowest, right? You had like the religious man, the cognitive man, the halakhic man. So
Wasn't that kind of hierarchy?
I think that's how he put it, right?
I don't remember if it was just two poles.
Yeah, I wasn't going to say it was so much this way. It's just.
Oh, I think that he put it as two poles, but I felt like he would always said that the cognitive man was closer to the halakhic man, right? And so that's why I kind of put it in that hierarchy. I don't think he's explicit about it, but I think it's implicit based on how he complements the two different people.
Right. Yeah, I'm trying to think about what Soloveitchik was saying about it, like the main drawbacks of the homo the religious person. Because here the religious person, Sachs is more of that perspective, I think, of yeah, I mean, he talks here too. The meaning of life is not so obscure that it needs advanced degrees in physics or metaphysics. Not so rare that it is in the possession of only the few. So that's kind of like what we talked about before. It's something that is kind of like more tuned to the meaning strata. To that more
It's interesting because they might be using it slightly different because he's talking about that grabbing hold of everything they could, that in the one sense, that kind of tangibleness of the people, of the intellectuals who are kind of, he says, living lives of self-deception. So in some ways I hear him talking about some of the concrete in both the intellectuals and the strength of the ordinary people. But I don't know, because in Soloveitchik, I felt like homo religiosus was more, he couldn't find it in the tangible. It was more like that place of dichotomy that you often see in some of the Christian sects, where it's kind of like the less that, like the body dies, so the spirit, rises above, and that kind of a grasp for it. But that's not exactly how Sachs is describing it here. So I'm like, yeah. Because he's seeing it in the simplistic. So is seeing it in the basic, the ordinary people. But then he mentions Rembrandt too, and I'm thinking, so he's looking at it also in terms of the light, the ways that we grasp light. So I'm thinking maybe I go back and reread Soloveitchik, because I'm like, not quite what I got out of the first book. Is there? And I think that's more what I meant by that question about proposition. Like when something's, proof. Was it proposition you said? When you look at things, I was thinking of, because my son Jacob has genetic differences. You look at the fact that you've got your basic, what you do in everyday life, but hovering in the background is the sense that if he was able to have a family, there is a higher probability that you would pass on those traits, even though in even though like in testing there was no evidence for them in my generation, but his generation and even his brother could potentially pass things on that lived unseen and suddenly showed up. So I'm kind of like, when you talk about that, I'm like, so do I look at that simply from a scientific viewpoint of we're performing an experiment here to see what travels generation to generation, or is this actually a religious question of in what faith context do we move ahead knowing those facts and knowing that we cannot predict really, and knowing that everything is still just whatever comes, which I thought was a bit of what Rabbi Sachs was saying too. So I'm kind of like, is it the same thing or is it different thing in the how I handle things in the two contexts? I'm not sure. It's the same word, but I don't know what it means, like if it means the same thing. Like when you put action to it, you know?
When you put what?
Action to it. Scientific action going with something like that is completely different than everyday living action, you know, from your religious or faith viewpoint. Your choices are based on different things and different purposes and different, like these aren't the same. That's why I wondered if the use was the same.
Yeah, I don't know if I quite map it the way you do, so I don't know how to answer that specifically.
Well, that's okay, because that would have been that, like, whether that maps the same way is the question. So no, you know, like, you're seeing it from more of a scientific viewpoint, like straight on.
What specifically? I might need more.
Okay, so remind me the word used. Was it probability?
Probability? No. Yeah.
Yeah, so, and the point of probability in the usage here that you brought up.
So that was just in terms of thinking about the proof of why. I mean, the whole. I think if you think about the context of the book, is the proof of why religious is valuable. So if you need to figure out why it's valuable, then you might want to go into it's more probable to be valuable because X, Y, and Z, because we can see. But for me, that's not something that necessarily guides the decisions that I make in terms of, well, maybe a little bit, but it's not something that so you can think that kind of like my perspective is a little bit like what he says about Max and what's the other person I should remember that.
Yeah, I forget. Lewis, yeah.
Max and Lewis, right? So that's not the foundation of why I do the religious things that I do necessarily, or it's not something that I personally need to understand to the fullest degree, because some of it I outsource to Gottlieb, to or to other people in some way, because obviously I'm not living like they are. So, but that's the point, that I'm not really, like, even though I don't know all those things all the way, I still live a certain way. So it's, I don't know how to explain. I don't know if that makes sense. But it is comforting to know, for example, to think about in terms of the probabilities of, like, okay, if I see, past generations that are living in a certain way, and this is the kind of life that they have, and it looks good to me, then I'm comforted in the fact that, okay, I can go down their steps or do the things that they are doing, and that's enough for me to just do it and then see what happens. Yeah.
That's a word. It's funny. my memory's not going to help at all here, but there was some comparison at one point of that, and I think it was here. I don't think it was in something else I read earlier this week, but I can't be certain of that. But it was talking, the word comfort came up as a very Jewish perspective on maybe the how or the why of some things. And I don't remember what remember what it was contrasted to. I'll have to think about it some more because yeah, I feel sometimes like when I listen to some of the I don't mean arguments in the sense of having a fight, but I mean, like the arguments from different Christian perspectives of what gives proof or what gives status to or what gives whatever, that it comes at it much more. I guess I was thinking of scientific and philosophical, or as both being somewhat more in my understanding of a legal context of how you divide things out, very much a, like line by line sort of thing. Whereas for me, my understanding of the religious had been much more experience based. And this year I'm learning that also within religious contexts, that experience is not a proof. Experience is a problem. And people that try to prove things by experience are not always looked fondly upon, because what they actually want on the Christian side is who follows which theologian, what's been added in, what's been cut out, who's been approved, who's been, that sense of approval to get to the point. And that's not scientific probability either, but it feels like that kind of almost like a slightly emotionally removed analytics of things. Yeah, so I'm really kind of stumbling on that right now. Trying to figure some of the language out around it, maybe.
So I have a question for you, Ben. On page 204, at the very top, the Rabbi says, Simcha is something we cannot experience alone. Simcha is joy shared. And he says, kind of early in the paragraph, that in English, all of our emotional words refer to states of minds we experience alone. Are there any other Hebrew words that are like shared emotions? And also, like, do you agree with that statement?
I don't think that I know enough about. I probably don't know enough about that word to say that I agree or disagree. Not in a position to. I don't think I'm in a position to agree or disagree with Sachs on that point. But I can say that I don't know just as of now, or it wasn't clear to me that is something that's a shared emotion necessarily. So I haven't heard that before. And trying to think about other emotions, I can think about it. But nothing pops up.
Anything else in this chapter?
I like when he talks about covenants. I like talking about covenants.
Yeah, I marked that too. I mean, that's something that's kind of like, I mean, yeah, obviously that's a shared, kind of like a shared thing. And it seemed like he was talking about that, if I understood that correctly, it's kind of like a vehicle for a group, for a community to define meaning together and like build those things together or recapture or I feel like he's there are a few places where I kind of could see similarities for some things that Vivek talks about as well. Like that kind of reminded me about like what Vivek mentions in terms of inventio, where it's not something that you invent just out of thin air. It's something that you invent and discover. You rediscover something like a seed of something that was of a past event that keeps defining or filling the present and the future. That was cool.
And what about you, Emma? What do you like about covenants?
I don't know. I've always liked the covenant versus contract sort of conversation. It turned up a lot in my upbringing when talking about marriage. And I don't necessarily have like anything particular to say. I just always I liked what he said about it, and I like when people talk about it because I think it's important.
Are you referring to the very end of the chapter where he talks about it, or?
And in the middle, he talks about like the fate, faith, fiction sort of concept of our developing understanding, and argues that covenant is sort of defining of faith, and then discusses like how meaning as covenant is made sort of between man and God and between like among communities.
Yeah. I made note on that spot in the middle too. I think there's something really important there. Like, yeah, I remember covenant as contract discussions in the Reformed faith in some respects, and but there's like a big, like what he was saying, like the language he's using. It does allude to a contract and agreement between people, but the covenant, he talks about in the end there the bond of loyalty and mutuality. And those two words really grabbed my attention because I think one of the stress points that I see when things start to break is that sense of what is there or was there a sense of loyalty and mutuality And what that goes back to the probability thing as proof, like what do you actually see that proves that there is loyalty or was loyalty, and whether it's intact or broken. But mutuality, I found to be a very interesting word there, because it doesn't divide that question into sides. It assumes the whole, that shared space. And that's one of the reasons I think that you bring up covenant is like really important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, something interesting. I don't know if he explicitly said that, but covenant, the word in Hebrew that is used in the Bible would be brit. And in Genesis, when God created, is bereshit bara Elohim. So it's created is bara, and it is, if not the same root, a very similar root. And I just checked, so they are. I think they're definitely related. So there is something about creation and covenant, right? And that's kind of like what Zach's saying in terms of meaning is not so meaning is made, not just discovered, right? And that's kind of like what you do with the covenant. You make the meaning, right? You build the body, right? Remember Peugeot talking about using that language a lot of like the body, like the church being the body of Christ or something like that. So that's kind of like I think it would be similar concepts.
I guess, one of the problems I had with this, and I'm glad you mentioned it, Emma, because about Brett Weinstein, because it was in my mind while I was reading this, but I couldn't think of where I had thought of it or it had come from before. But when he says, meaning isn't found, it's created, it seems like you don't have to then say like, oh, religion is the answer, right? You can just say any other system, people come together and say, let's all go fishing, and you become fishermen together, and suddenly like you create meaning by being like the fisherman. So it just, I just don't know where you go from there.
Yeah.
Why choose religion then? It's like, okay, meaning's important. I guess we'll go and make some meaning, because it's not like it's found somewhere. You have to create it. So there we go, creating.
It comes up a lot in the Darwin chapter. Because he talks about, what really made me think of it is he talks about how like you test science by doing science, you test religion by doing religion, by which he seemed to mean to me that like you do a religion as if it's true, and if it like works out for you basically, then you should stick with it, and it's probably true. But he didn't seem to have any other argument for religion in that chapter.
And I have some discomfort around that.
Yeah.
Because
Ew.
I feel like the expected proof is that if you do religion to see if religion is true, then if there's no problems in your life, if everything works out, all goes well, God's obviously blessing you, therefore he must exist, everything he says is true. And that's not at all how my life has gone. So I'm kind of like, that's not the reason I keep going forward. So then something else is. And I struggle to say what that something is. Sometimes I can probably say it when I'm not trying to think about it, but thinking about it doesn't get me there.
Yeah, and I don't think that's exactly what he's saying. It's more like, if religion is helping you like make meaning even when things go wrong, and helping you like weather things like that, then religion is, good for you, and therefore probably true. Which is very similar, honestly, to Brett Weinstein's literally false, metaphorically true.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying and the and how that's risky. So I don't really know. I don't have an answer for that or anything to say to that. Even though I would be curious to learn about the other arguments, but I also don't know if, like, when you just talked about meaning. And obviously it's hard to talk about to speak about because it's personal, but like good things are not, meaning doesn't equal good things or bad things, right? I mean, like, both can be meaningful. So if something bad happens to you, it doesn't mean that it's meaningless. So that's not necessarily the proof, but obviously that's hard to say because, I mean, when something bad happens to you, I don't know. It's hard to approach that, but kind of like the yeah.
When something bad happens, I feel like it turns the volume up on the meaning. You know, it makes it more intense, more like it sits in a very definite place. It's not sitting in a slightly gray area. It's, you know, something traumatic happens and it's immediately front and center. So, you know, therefore it's getting more attention, which seems to fuse it into whatever meaning I take away.
Mm-hmm.
And not just because it's something good, which is funny because I feel like sometimes it's the more sad, angry, traumatic, you know, things that really make me pause and think about what I believe and why I believe. And, you know, so sometimes the hard things in that sense almost create more meaning than the basic everyday, you know, everything's going on as normal things do. And I don't feel like that's not how religion would present it. You know, like, I mean, we're supposed to make, yeah, like even in church, they'll have books about healthy habits, you know, learning how to walk with God. You want healthy habits. Those form meaning. And I'm like, so does one form meaning by the repetition and the other by the intensity, or do they both form, like, I don't know. But there's patterns.
Yeah, I don't know if it's an interesting way of how we're using meaning here. This kind of reminds me, but it just reminds me of something that seems connected. Like, there is this cliche, right, that like when you're in dire straits, that's where you're looking for meaning, or for religion. That's like you would ask for God when you're like really, when your team is not winning. That's when you pray, right? So that kind of feels like it,
Like that, yeah.
like that. And that's is kind of related to, you can think about it in terms of like the fear of God or the awe, right? The fear aspect and then the love aspect. Now, the fear aspect is not wrong, or if you fear God or what will happen to you because, or yeah, what you do would result in bad, right? The punishment. That's not necessarily a bad position to be in. It's just that it's not as ideal or good as being in a loving relationship where you can know more or explore more God or your religious belief. So, and that kind of seemed also connected. I don't know if that connects to anybody else.
It connects to meaning in the sense of what I was describing, because it would be like, you know, like when I would take Jacob into the hospital for surgeries, a lot of the meaning revolves around the fear places, that sense of trepidation. What's going to be the outcome? You hope for the good and you trust the doctor as best you can, and you give everything over to what needs to be done. And that sits in a place of fear as a parent because of it, not opposed to the love or instead of the love. It's because of the love. They kind of merge for me there, you know? Because somehow that sense of fear is, or when you talk about a sense of dread, it's always that, you know, anything you love, you can lose. And that sense of loss is always just sort of hanging there. And sometimes you love more deeply because you're so conscious of that place, you know? You see the value in what you love because it isn't just sitting there with 100% stamp guarantee on it saying this is always going to be exactly like this, and you don't have to think about this at all.
Right. A best cure for a relationship is maybe like a day away from each other, and then you get a feeling of what's missing.
Well, I think kind of related to this is this idea of like death salience people talk about. So like something that I don't know exactly 100% where this comes from, but I think that there's studies that like if death is kind of relevant to you, it's called, then like your life has more meaning. So for example, like sometimes, I don't know if this has happened to you, but you're driving and like you almost get into a car accident, but you don't. And I feel like when that happens, like you have a feeling of like gratitude, right? Immense gratitude, like, oh, thank goodness I didn't get into a car accident, right? And or like, you know, if something almost bad happens,
Yeah.
like then that thing that you have suddenly becomes so much more meaningful because you're like, I potentially didn't have it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I can relate.
Yeah.
Even though maybe you need to focus on your driving a little bit more, like just make sure that you're actually. Sounds
It's only happened once or twice.
Okay.
Wait, you got into an accident, Elijah?
So actually, I've only been hit by someone. I was turning into my driveway, and some lady in an SUV decided to rear end my car, which was not fun.
Nice.
It wasn't my fault. She was like, I was pregnant, and I was like, I don't know. A lot of people are pregnant, and they don't get the car accident. So
True, but it's what ends up on some of those office joke things they pass around about, you know, the best things heard in, you know, like the court explanation of or an insurance explanation of, and they're hilarious, you know.
Oh yeah.
And, yeah.
though I will tell you, when you do get into a car accident, not very meaningful, just anger. So it's about only if it doesn't happen that.
Well, I just don't think you're doing it right, you know? You have to
Getting into car accidents?
serious car accident. Yeah. Like you have to get into a serious car accident for it to be meaningful, okay?
Okay, well, I'll go get into a serious car accident, and we'll see
Don't
how much.
do it.
I'll be like,
Please
Trey
don't do that.
told me to get into a car accident.
No.
Yeah.
Do not
And then you'll
try
say-
it out.
Yeah. And then you'll say you listen to a man that's borderline crazy. Yeah, on the internet. How will that go for you?
I prefer your near
I
miss.
think they'll look at me in the clown mask and hat, and they'll be like, and Trey's the crazier one. What a world.
Yeah. Trust them. It's crazy. Sold the book.
Yeah, do you have any thoughts, Trey? You're just so busy driving, not getting into car accidents that, you know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how I don't get into car accidents. I think I probably should.
Let's not.
You and Andrew with how much driving you guys do on stream.
You can't say that Andrew does more driving than me. Okay, I'm the champ. It's me and Hezzy. That's the only difference.
All right, anything else in this chapter, or do we want to finally move on to Darwin?
Darwin.
Let's one vote for
Sounds good.
Darwin, 2 votes for Darwin, 3 votes for Darwin.
You got a majority. I think you can go.
Yeah.
All right. On to Darwin. All right, Ben, what did you think about the Darwin chapter?
Me for Darwin? Oh
Yes.
man, I think I'm the wrong person to start with on this one. Yeah, I'm probably the wrong person because I mean this is interesting to me, but I don't. Yeah, I don't like. Yeah, I don't have enough.
Okay, I guess I'll just start with one little complaint.
Mhm.
So in our book on page 222, he says the Bible is making here and elsewhere a philosophical point of some delicacy and power. It's rejecting the Aristotelian principle of the law of contradiction, either P or not P. And I'm like, really? Like, are we really saying that the Bible is making an argument against the law of non-contradiction? I just didn't feel like that was true. It seems like it's more of like a black and white fallacy. Like, was event X a chance event or was it intended by divine design? It's like, well, you just don't have to, like, it's not rejecting the law of non-contradiction, but it's not the
Yeah.
only options. I'm like, really, Rabbi? Like, why are you saying something so weird? I was not
It's
happy.
not like the Aristotelian law of non-contradiction applies to everything always all of the time.
Yeah, I just feel like he has this, like, as you said, like, sometimes he, like, remembers, oh, yeah, the left brain, right brain. And then sometimes he's like, oh, yeah, I have to, like, hate on Greek ideas.
The Greeks.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
wait. Maybe let's dwell on this for myself at least. What is he doing wrong here? Like what's going on?
So it's like saying, do you know what the law of non-contradiction is?
No.
Okay, so it's basically the idea that something can't be, like, true and false at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Right,
Yeah.
so, like,
It's
you can't
one
say,
of
like,
the like basic principles of Aristotelian logic.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, I'm familiar with of it. I've heard it, but I don't know the places where it is. In the
yeah,
hierarchy.
it's like saying, like, x equals 3 and x equals 7. It's like, well,
Mhm.
that can't be
Right.
true.
Okay.
But there's a fallacy called the black and white fallacy, where
Mhm.
someone presents an idea as a dichotomy. Like, it can either be, you can either have toast for breakfast or you can have pancakes for breakfast. And it seems like Rabbi Sachs is saying, well, the only way you can get it away from this is by saying, oh, we're going to jettison the law of non-contradiction. Or instead, you can just say, well, there are more than one option than toast and pancakes, right? You can also have waffles. And so, like, why are you making such a strong, almost outlandish statement when you can just say, oh, it's just a false dichotomy?
Okay.
It's almost like saying there is no gravity because we have planes. It's just like, why would you say that?
I don't know, but the word covenant's coming to mind. Like,
what? What do you mean, Sandy?
It's covenant or not covenant?
It's covenant or not covenant?
no, because he's talking about the fact that he's not going with that either or, but he's saying that the Bible is not. It's making a very careful point that that the law of contradiction is not what it's pointing out. Is this, a couple of sentences, was event X a chance event, or was it intended by divine design? Because in our minds, philosophically, we think it either is chance or it is design. But he's saying it might be both.
Yeah, so
that's why I said covenant, because when you slip up to the top of the next page, He's talking about how you work out the providential patterns. And that's where I see, like he's used Joseph as an example, but I mean, I think about the genetics question I posed. It isn't either or, and it isn't both and. It's yeah. You were gonna say?
No, I wish I was more quick with examples. You probably needed just more knowledgeable Jew, but I get what you're saying, and what he's saying in terms of P or not P actually just reminds me of like the idea of machloket, or right, like of having different opinions or different interpretations of whatever it would be, a law or like a law or a verse. And the idea is that you can hold both of those in mind, or hold both of those, you can say is true or just in mind, and you can interpret something and derive an insight or meaning from it at the same time. So it's not necessarily like there needs to be like a third option that is completely different, like waffles. It can still be that it's, for one person it might be P, and for the other person it might be or no P. I think the story of Joseph actually, right? There could be interpretation of he slept with Potiphar, like the wife of Pharaoh, and some interpretation would be he didn't. He like held on to himself, right? And you can derive different meanings from both of those as you interpret them, and that will be your method of how to maybe apply certain laws, or just derive insights and then make that practical in your life. But those two can be true at the same time.
You're not talking about Pharaoh.
I'm not.
He's talking about.
You are talking about Pharaoh.
Yeah.
You're not talking about Pharaoh. Right. See, but the problem with the law of contradiction is you can't say that you're talking about, like, if I say Pharaoh isn't Pharaoh, and you're saying, well, Pharaoh is Pharaoh, like it doesn't work.
But that's where the difference in how, and that's what I was asking earlier in terms of how Christianity and Judaism approach language and meaning. If I go from Joseph's story and what drove the story, what was the purpose of the story, what comes from the story, what meaning do we take away like 1,000 and change years later, all of those things are part of the same story. Or with my kids. So some event happened and changed a couple of the genes in one of my children. The other one has not been tested. Both could have some slight variation in whatever my grandparents had in the same genetic place. Or you can interpret it to say, well, they have better tests now. And back in the day, they may have still had some of these things, but there was nothing that came of it that showed what was there. It was still there, but you couldn't see it, and nothing proved that it was there because nothing demonstrated it. Both of those things are interpretations, and I was thinking of the word interpretation as being like something really important in my life context because of having a deaf son. I don't remember if I put it into the server or somewhere, but I was thinking about when you talk about interpretation, do you mean the way that it gets argued in biblical text, whether it's a literal translation, word for word, what are you focusing on when you speak of how you interpret something, which is basically what meaning do you take from this when you explain it as that? Because will use, if I said to you, I am an interpreter, which I am not, but if I did say that because I was, I could mean that I know more than one language and can stand between people of the two different languages and explain what has been said back and forth. My words, in some respects, are that third meaning. It's not necessarily exactly what the first person said, and it's not necessarily exactly what the second person heard, but it's a bridge between the two of them. And the word interpret can also mean, hey, I work at the local pioneer village, and I am a historic interpreter. I tell people what life was like in such and such a thing. When you stand in X building and talk about here is the kitchen and here's the thing and this is the foods they had, that also is a way we use the word interpret. So when I'm hearing the, it may, I'm not saying a P, not P context. I'm saying that the Bible says both. What I'm hearing is it encompasses the whole. And that's what we see when we look at it. And that it doesn't necessarily break down easily into an Aristotelian law of this or that.
So Emma, Elijah, is that like the Schrodinger's cat problem?
Schrodinger's cat. Well, I mean, the whole point of Schrodinger's cat is to say that a cat can't be alive and dead. It's one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that we don't know, doesn't change that fact, right? It's ridiculous to assume that it's both alive and dead.
Mm-hmm.
And you still have to choose how to interpret it so that you can act in some respect in relation to it. Alive or dead cat.
Yeah, you're going to have one pissed off cat or one dead cat, so.
See, I feel like the point here is that, like, literary interpretation and, like, you could say meaning making, and, like, there are just a whole bunch of things that don't work on the same terms as logic. So the problem is that he sort of seems to frame it as if this invalidates formal logic, like, as a thing, just the way he forms the paragraph.
Mm-hmm.
And he just doesn't need to say that. He just, like, dragged it in for no reason.
So using unreasonable force. So what's that called? Like, right? Yeah.
And I think that's what Elijah was getting at, and that was kind of my problem with this part too.
Yeah, that's why I tried to say that, like, when I mentioned gravity in planes, like, you don't need to say that gravity is disproven just because we have planes. Like, it's simply, like, it's just a strange thing to say. So I just don't, I don't know, I just read this and I couldn't believe it. I was like, why would you say this? Yeah, it's just crazy. So another silly Rabbi Sachs moment. We got a lot of these in the book.
Rejecting the Aristotelian principle. Yeah. Interesting.
Anything else in the chapter?
If we say no, are you going to say book club is done?
The book club is over! Before Trey even gets home, finally.
Looks like he has several stops, like, and I don't see anybody else in the car. Like, I don't know if he's like, it's like, yeah, he has ghosts. He's picking up and dropping off ghosts. That's what he's doing.
No, I got groceries, and then I also got a phone charger, so I was doing errands while I was,
Oh, is that why you disappeared for, like, random periods?
Yeah. My phone's on low power. But I guess back to the book, aside from my nuances, are we just saying that, like, Darwin, with Darwin, it doesn't have to be a P or not P scenario? Is that what you're saying?
I think that's what he's getting at.
I mean, I guess, but, like, we do have to look at the Bible in a different way. You know what I mean? Like, Like in saying it's sort of a solved situation is not really true. I think at least.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah.
True assistance.
Elijah's at a loss for words.
Yes. I'm always at a loss for words when Trey says anything. It's so deep always.
Based.
It's true.
But like, you get what I mean. Like we look in the past 10 years, there's probably 10 different views on Genesis. Like 10 different books that are talking about Genesis in different ways. Like to some extent.
You should read some old medieval Jewish commentaries on the Bible. It's pretty strange how much they disagree. So
They disagree with what?
well, take someone like Radak. I think it's Radak. He has a very like naturalistic way of reading every miracle. So whereas someone like Nachmanides would have a more like mystical way of reading it. You know. So
Right. So I mean, this is the kind of the levels, right? It's kind of like what we. So it's not like it's different. Well, yeah. I mean, we were talking about different options, but there's also the idea of the vertical levels of the mystical. You can call it literal, even though I don't know if it's literal, like the pshat, the basic interpretation, and then the hinted interpretation, right? The mystical interpretation, and then even more than that. But those, and again, those would be considered at the same time.
I guess. But I mean it like I understand. I've heard the arguments basically saying that like we shouldn't expect, or I've heard multiple arguments, one of them being that like Genesis' point is not to give accurate history. It's more or less a polemic against this against Near Eastern myths and everything like that. I'm like, okay, cool. But I guess it just seems like when do we translate things for our benefit? As an honest question.
What do you mean?
Like, when do we like, okay, what is it? What's his name? What's single cell? What's his name? Pretty much.
the guy in the Discord who's flipping out always on general.
Yeah.
Harry.
Harry.
He did post a meme where it was like homosexuality is unnatural, and then he says from the book that has talking snakes, blase, 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 blah. And I'm like, that's also an important part, like, to understand. Like we have like some general understanding of something, and then we have a reality that sort of goes against it, or is there some pushback against it, and then the question becomes like, which option do we pull on it?
Well, I mean, it just depends on if you accept the premise homosexuality is unnatural.
Right.
So you can just reject the premise and there's no problem.
I was gonna say it also goes to how you define natural.
Yeah, I don't know where is that from even. Like nobody says that homosexuality is not natural.
Well, yeah, I mean that comes from, I guess, like Catholic philosophies and everything like that.
Yeah, that's more of a Catholic philosophy thing than a "this is in the Bible" thing.
Right, but I think the point is that like we have this level of this is like this makes sense, right? And then we have this world of the magical, right? And basically what we're saying is like this world that's incredibly magical, incredibly extravagant, right, needs to have firm, solid rules. Needs to have firm, solid rules on us. So I don't think the point is an abomination, like, or no, it's unnatural. We can say like how the Bible puts it in Leviticus, like it's an abomination, right? But like you could also say the same thing about like how the angels are presented in Ezekiel, how everything is like that. Like I hope you understand what I'm saying. Is I'm saying like we can choose, like, when do we just surrender to the mystical? When should we just say, no, we're young earth creationists. We don't care what you say. I'm going my way. You're going yours. You know?
When you move to Moscow, Idaho, that's when you know. You should say that. The moment you don't live there, you should probably not do
Well, like, why do you say that point? Come on.
Is this a Doug Wilson joke?
that. Yes, it's a Doug Wilson joke.
Oh, because he's a young earth creationist? Okay.
He's very literal on his Bible. I don't even know if literal is appropriate. He's very fundamentalist.
Someone was aggressive. Well, not aggressively, but defending him in Bridges of Meaning recently. And that's where I learned someone, I don't remember. And that's when I learned everything I now know about Doug Wilson. Because before that, I'd never heard the name. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
I get your point, and I think that would be like my usual devil's advocate. Like I would want to know, like I can't answer that question. Like I would usually, that's kind of like one of those questions that will always be in my mind of like, how do we know that we're not interpreting something just for our own benefit? Because I feel like it's a good point to raise. But I think that's where, this is obviously just from my perspective of thinking about like the whole how interpretation is important to, and this is I think where the probability would also come into play maybe a little bit of, you see how past generations or how your tradition has interpreted something, and you see how that plays out, and that is how you know that that something is interpreted in the right way, or that it's right to do it that way, right? I mean, and in Judaism even would have specific also, if you're trying to interpret something, you would have like specific laws of how you would try to interpret that or derive a law from different sources, and then kind of constrains you in terms of how you do that. How do you interpret, right? How do you do that endeavor? So,
but I think that's only for legal matters. For halakha, there are particular rules of interpretation, but for just like interpreting the Bible as literature, I don't think that there are those kind of iron rules.
And what would be the purpose of doing that?
To understand halakha?
No, to interpret it as a literature.
So you can pull meaning from it.
Okay, but so as literature, but how? So yeah, maybe I'm. Yeah, but that still needs to be. So I would say that still needs to be within a tradition. Like you can't derive meaning from literature. From you, like it's going to be very hard for you to derive meaning from the literature without the context of how it's been derived in the past, or right, like doing that on your own is, and then like taking action without insight. Like if that action if that interpretation influences your behavior, then in what context are you taking action? Like within a specific tradition, or to do what, right? To to enhance or to do something for fulfill your own goal, or the goal of the community and broader from that, so there's, I almost feel like it's the wrong, it's like might almost like a false perspective might be harsh, but just deriving it on your own is kind of like, I don't know. Does that make sense? I'm not sure if that makes sense.
Yeah, I can understand you're saying that it makes more sense, or how do you interpret something outside of a framework?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, yeah, it's when you interpret something outside of a framework, it's kind of you're in no man's land. And then obviously, if you derive insight from it, it is so that it influences your behavior, and your behavior is going to be you're going to do that in the world where there's other people. So it's going to go. So you're not, and then you're not in your head, right? You're doing it in a certain location. So. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's kind of a good question. I don't know, like, who started the tradition, right? And I think that's always just a problem. You have interpretations of things; they may not necessarily be correct, or they might be correct, or maybe there is no correct answer. Who knows?
So does that relate to 229 in our book or in my book, where he's talking about, well, like I underlined a few words at the top. He's talking about there being nothing obvious in divine design. It's oblique, subtle, and sometimes nonlinear. So he says, why would a creator choose to operate this way, allowing species and eventually humankind to emerge obliquely rather than directly? Then he goes into talking about Soviet Union and Communist China failed, and the economies of the West succeeded. Like he's talking about the ways that our cultures have formed and our people have formed, and planned economy fails to liberate energies, does not grant freedom, it does not generate creativity. It's predictable, ungenerous, dictatorial, precisely the things that the God of Abraham is not. And then I really underlined the paragraph below that. Darwinian evolution precisely fits the model that I argued for in chapter 1. In the case of Abrahamic monotheism and the meaningfulness of life, the meaning of the system lies outside the system. That, I argued there, applied to systems in general, to the universe as a whole. Any system is made up of rules that govern events within the system. The rules explain how the system works, but not why it was created or evolved. That is why Darwinianism fulfills an important function for Abrahamic monotheism. It tells us that God, having created the conditions for life, transcends life as he transcends the universe. The idea that we should look for God in nature is essentially pagan and constitutes a pagan residue, even within the great Aristotle himself. Faith says all that breathes praises God. It does not say all that breathes proves the existence of God. And I feel like we keep talking around whether it's proving something or, an alternate purpose. And here he's saying the alternate purpose is to praise God, like although the relationship component of God, not who is he, does he exist, which can still say, hey, yes, absolutely, he exists, completely irrelevant to me, but he does exist. This is saying, he exists, and this is the relationship between us. And I'm just, like on the next page, I underlined, we are culture producing, information sharing, meaning learning animals. Nature built us for culture. So there again, he's talking about that. He goes back to relationship. Everything is community, culture, relationship, interaction, that shared place, that we talked about earlier, Ben talked about earlier. But I hadn't really ever thought of Darwin in this context. I've only ever heard him in the very negative, how he disproves God in the Bible context. And I'm like, oh, look, somebody thinks that he's actually in some kind of relationship to God.
Yeah, he's trying to use Darwin to do something. Yeah, I don't know how much like others would agree with him.
Probably not. I went, Sorry. I interrupted.
No, I didn't have anything else.
I actually did really like this explanation. Although I'm not like an expert on any of this stuff by any means. But I've also never had this like burning problem reconciling evolution and the Bible. It's always seemed to work well enough for me.
Yeah, that's why when Elijah pointed to me, I was like, it's like, yeah, it's interesting. It's not a burning yeah, it wasn't a burning issue for me as well. So, but yeah, he's almost using it again like as a tool of interpretation as a lens into knowing a little bit more about God and how it works, right? And kind of like in how the Maimonides kind of looks about knowing God in terms of if you know the cosmology, if you know the biology of humans or other animals, it helps you see the intricacies to make the right judgment calls, even in terms of alakha or stuff like that. So,
Uh-oh.
I didn't add you to the stream.
I added me to the stream.
I see.
That's one of the privileges of this being my account.
Mm. I see.
So you just came to join us for the last page and a half?
Wait, did we already pass Darwin? Are we on to the last chapter about problem of evil?
No, that's for next time, according to Elijah's intro.
Yeah.
What?
I thought we were reading this one too this week, so I read it.
Well,
Oh,
I read it and you read it. I said we just,
Yeah, I've read it.
becomes the Trey and Sandy show. Because I didn't read it because I checked the Discord to double check which ones I was supposed to read because I didn't want to do extra reading.
Didn't we go for 3 weeks though? Am I crazy on that? We went like. we didn't
The
go-
past few weeks we've been doing 3 a week, but I think they got longer.
I blame Elijah for everything.
I did too.
That's fair.
I don't get Elijah. You know what I mean?
13.
I mean, if you claim to be a clown, aren't you signing up to be blamed for everything? Isn't that one of the purposes of a clown?
Wait, what are we blaming Elijah for?
Who didn't?
Yo, I just got back and I heard you guys blaming me for something. What the hell is that? What did I just get blamed for?
Everything because you're a clown.
Was it Trey again? Did Trey come on and start blaming me for stuff? All makes sense. Makes sense.
Ukraine, all the bad stuff.
Trey's very excited to start the next chapter.
I want to, Loki, I want to skip the next chapter because it's kind of like this.
Wait, you want to skip the next chapter?
Yeah, because it's just sad. Like, he's like, yeah, there's no arguments. There's no points against the problem of evil. None of the theodicies work.
Whoa, you've already read ahead?
I did too.
Oh my, you guys are spoiling the chapter for me?
I thought that we had to read 3.
Oh my god.
Elijah wants to be disappointed at the right time.
In
Yeah,
real
what the
time.
hell? Rabbi Sachs has already disappointed me plenty enough in this book. All right, let me be disappointed in my own time, comfortable.
I'm still on chapter 7.
Do you wish to discuss chapter 7?
Wow, there's a lot of chapters left.
Yeah.
No, there are.
No, we're on our last time. Right? We're gonna. The next book club is gonna be the last one, right?
Well, this
No,
one
we have
For
2
this-
more.
supposed to be chapters 10 and 11.
Oh,
Yes.
And what's next time?
Okay,
Well, if
that's
you guys were here at the beginning of the book club, you would have known what I've said, and that was chapters 12 and 13. And then after that, we're going to read chapters 14 and the epilogue.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Elijah's really liking this book.
Yes.
Clearly.
You know, I liked Rabbi Sachs at the beginning of this, and as the chapters have gone on, I've liked him less and less.
meeting chapter was pretty sick. I did.
We need Yosef here,
To defend him.
to defend. Yeah.
I mean, I like Rabbi Soloveitchik. That was good. I respected Rabbi Soloveitchik at the end of the book.
So Rabbi Sachs is kind of a squish. I don't know if that's what's getting to you guys,
Yeah.
but he is a squish.
Yeah, that's what showed in the Darwin debate. I mean, the Richard Dawkins debate. It was really sad.
He's just too nice.
Has he ever
Yeah.
cussed at somebody or said you shouldn't do that? I mean,
There was
Yeah,
a time that he told Richard Dawkins that his views on God, the Old Testament, are anti-Semitic.
that was a good one. That was kind of funny.
I
though.
approved.
It was kind of funny because he was
So when celebrity fights in celebrity boxing are a thing, I kind of would like to see Rabbi Sachs and Richard Dawkins have duked it out or something like
I don't know.
no, I'm trying.
Well, not going to happen now. Rabbi Sachs passed away over a year ago. I think over a year ago.
Yeah.
It's a nice life,
Yeah.
though.
Yeah, I don't think Richard Dawkins is going to make it to the world to come
Why not?
because he doesn't believe in the world to come.
Why is that an important quality?
If you don't believe in the afterlife, you're not going to get an afterlife.
Job wasn't sure of the afterlife. Yeah, he's probably.
I didn't say he wasn't sure. I said he doesn't believe in the afterlife.
I don't know. I think he'll make it.
Is that like a negative positive statement in that if you don't believe in the afterlife, you're absolutely saying there is nothing there?
Well, no. Dawkins very much so says there's no afterlife.
Yeah. But we're Buddhists, okay?
That's what I mean. Is that the negative version of I am creating nothing after I die? I just simply draw a line. End of me. Is it a creative quality of people and participatory fashion with God of creation to say
Well,
that?
they're making a judgment, and we believe as you judge, you will be judged. So
That's what I mean. Is it an actual creative quality of man to be able to? Is he creating that outcome? Yeah. Okay.
I just don't think he's done bad enough to go to not be revived or whatever. He's a pretty good guy.
that's not. Not having being annihilated isn't the worst thing in the world. It's eternal conscious torments far worse.
Yeah, of course.
So I'm telling you, I am actually joking. I'm not making any sort of thing, but I can't imagine Dawkins in the afterlife. That would just be weird.
I would love that. It'd be the greatest joke. It would show God.
Is this debate in the book? What are we? Is Sachs talking about Dawkins?
When do we care what's
No,
in the book?
we're
club?
getting sidetracked.
Sorry,
If we don't start talking about Paul of Tarsus, Elijah's going to get mad at me.
I was literally just thinking that. I was like, I'm not even going to say anything because no matter what I do, every time Jacob's on stream, he talks about Paul of Tarsus. Like,
There
I
you
think
go.
Jacob,
Even your
you
thoughts.
and Paul of Tarsus need to have like a heart to heart or something like that because I think you two are like meant to be for each other. Like, I think your heaven is just going to be you and Paul of Tarsus arguing for eternity.
This is possible. This is definitely possible.
I
No,
think
I don't.
Jacob's heaven and Ortho Bro heaven are scarily similar.
I don't know. What do you like? If you could get Paul back, like, let's say you just got to meet him, what would you just say to him? You know what I mean?
No.
Say.
I mean, I am desperately awaiting when Father Stephen takes me through Romans 7.
What if you just didn't write it? What if Paul was like,
Okay.
some other guy?
That would be hilarious.
letters.
That would be hilarious. We have a rabbi.
That's funny.
So, there we go. We have a rabbi.
What is so funny? Well, I am laughing because Jacob was making a half serious pun about whether somebody could imagine no heaven, therefore create one. And Elijah was thinking that Jacob was about to bring up Paul of Tarsus. And now they're discussing.
The only reason I brought him up was because I knew. Rabbi Mullet, we can certainly address that if you need right now, but it is the middle of the book club, and Elijah will throttle me if I continue to.
Wait, yeah. Did we have anything else about?
Yeah. Do you guys have anything else on Darwin?
No, I was done.
I don't think so.
Emma's done also. Okay. Ben, are you done?
We didn't solve it though. We didn't solve
Were we expecting to?
But that was my question at the beginning. Is this a problem where you're supposed to have a yes/no answer, or is it one where we were discussing the word interpret and what interpret means? How we interpret the word interpret for like 10 minutes.
Wait, what are we solving?
See? My point.
Yeah, I didn't have a lot of notes about this specific chapter.
I guess what to solve is like, okay, because from what I understand, the basic judo move is basically we look at Genesis and we say, well, the cultural context and the point of the author was not to sort of make a scientific point, but rather to make a sort of theological point, right? But I feel, yeah.
So I think the perspective of where you're asking that question really differs between some of us. So specifically what you're asking when you're looking at this book is very different from what I'm asking. I'm not looking actually for how to interpret, like how to interpret, like how to reconcile those things. So, so do you see what I mean? Like I don't.
Why not, Ben? Why not?
Why not?
Yeah.
I guess it's not something that seems that important for me at this moment personally. Like I have other things that I'm working on. They might be related, or like there are other things that I'm doing, or like certain insights that maybe are still derived from that story. I will just take them as is and just use them to inform my behavior right now. And if I need more information about it, or if I have more questions, then I'll ask it when I have it. But it's not a question that I have right now.
Well, like, don't you think it's a little different to have questions about the end or the middle versus the beginning?
That it's a little different.
Yeah, like I don't know how I could start at least continuing the story if I'm like, well, I still have confusings on the beginning. It's like, for example, someone started a story and said, and they were in New Jersey. It's like, well, how did they get in New Jersey? Why is New Jersey important? You know what I mean? And it's like, then you can talk about whatever you want, but I'm so curious about New Jersey.
But all kinds of stories work like that. They start with all these questions and you don't find them out until you keep reading the story.
Yep.
I'm thinking especially like I like big, thick fantasy books that just drop you in the middle of a crap ton of world building and then nothing makes sense until you're like 10 chapters in.
That's a fair point. But like with Quentin Tarantino, for example, it's like you figure it out eventually. But like I feel like it's not like we go to Psalms and we get, oh, this is what Genesis meant. Or we get to Exodus. It's like, oh, this is what Genesis meant. It's like, oh, still all those questions.
But is it so I don't know if maybe I'm like not doing it right. But so if for me it's not like, okay, I need to figure out this story and I'm gonna start with the beginning and that is going to inform my behavior. I mean, the way that I'm right now thinking about it or how I'm going is like I'm just doing things that, right? So I'm just embodying parts of the tradition or the things that I'm let's say supposed to do, and through that I'm discovering things as I go and I learn more about the stories. But it's not like if I know the beginning then I will do X, Y, and Z. Like if I get Genesis, then I will wear tefillin or I will do the liturgy in the beginning of the day. Then if I get to Exodus and I understand that, I'll say that other prayer because now I know what it is. So the story is not like the way I enter necessarily, even though obviously that's kind of like a big part of it. But yeah.
I guess that's true because in a sense you have tradition or at least something to enter into. And I think if you're a Protestant, you have the book to enter into, but you don't really have like church as a practice to enter into as much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very interesting. I don't know. I feel like I might have like a gap in terms of kind of like understanding. That's why I said what I said when we were just going into it, that I feel like I have a different perspective. So it's really interesting just to hear where you're coming from. But I just wanted to highlight that it's where I'm coming from. It might be different.
That's odd because you just said you might have a gap. But what Trey said that makes me think of churches that in some churches Sunday, and then you get through the week and you go back to church. So I feel like there's more of a gap in a sense in some churches have, little prayer books and something you do throughout the week. But even the ones that do, the people that go there don't necessarily do it. Whereas what you're saying is that you have daily practices and things.
I meant a perspectival gap. So I don't know what it is to be Trey. I don't stream when I'm driving. So I don't know. I don't live in California. So that's the gap that I'm talking about.
So you're missing some life in your life.
You're not a ginger, so you have a soul.
Okay.
I do. Actually, I do. If you look at my beard, it's a little ginger.
But
my brother's ginger.
Question: how the liturgy is organized, as well as the days of the week that are important, are because of Genesis. Like that doesn't ring your bell. Like, man, I need to figure this out. Like, it's not like you do it on a Thursday. Or wait, you do it on a Saturday.
We do liturgy every day.
Okay, but the Sabbath.
The Sabbath is on the Saturday, yes.
Yeah, the reason that it's on a Saturday is because of Genesis.
This is true.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't put those two together. Like, man, I gotta figure this out.
I mean, I do go into it, but like I do It's not like I'm saying, oh, I don't read Genesis. I don't care what it says there. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that it's just that me understanding Genesis to the nth degree is not a requirement for me to do what I need to do, right? I mean, I think that's. I mean, when it says in Sinai, like we will do and we will understand, something like that, right? It's like I'm doing it and I'll understand, and I think that's part of maybe what Sachs a little bit said in terms of like I don't know what he said here. I'm confused because I'm also listening to him in his podcast, but this idea of like it's not something that you are. And there is this leap of faith, or it's not something that you can see immediately. So it's you just embody it, or you work through it, and then.
So I kind of have a question. I'm just not quite sure what it is. Comes from what Trey said about you don't have to figure that out, about liturgy and Genesis. But it goes to what you're saying, about you just like, so in my family and in church culture, there's a lot of what Trey is asking for. Well, you have to dissect it. You have to figure it out. You have to plot the line of why this and why that, and therefore, you're doing it correctly. So you will do X, Y, and Z. But what I'm struggling to frame as a question is, I never succeeded in doing that. I don't think like that. That was always a bit of a bone of contention between me and my ex, because he's like, well, I've read all of Calvin's Institutes, and I've read this, and I've read, he'd read Plato and he'd read Socrates. He read the Bible from cover to cover 15 times. And analyzing everything in black and white is kind of his thing. But so he's like aiming for what Trey's asking for, but it didn't make for the shared experience of a day-to-day liturgy, which I would have liked, but found in completely different context of simply saying, you just read and you engage with it, and you keep talking about embodying it. And that wasn't really explained. I mean, there was a lot of readings and words and books, and, most of them like how to evangelize, because they'd already figured everything out and written 5 billion books about it. Mm-hmm. But it didn't, but there was nothing that actually said, we join together in worship, we go out, and these are the things that we all do. There was no we all. I mean, there kind of was, but not in actual, let's take your hand and lead you towards it practice. That's the part that I found missing. And I don't know what question it is that fits that. Just that was part of what disturbed me in reading these chapters too. Because I was like, what's Darwin even doing here? The sum total place of Darwin in my life was just arguments between my ex and my son. Like, who took different sides of the equation and argued them. And I'm like, that's his purpose in place, to be argued about. It doesn't lead to liturgy in day-to-day life. And here's Rabbi Sachs talking about how he disproves Aristotelian thought, and points to kind of like the embodiment side of it, the living it out side of it. And I'm like, and at one point, I don't remember where, he either said it in this chapter or referred back to it, about how we want everything so quickly now. And one of the things that was the takeaway from Darwin and study of natural species and communities is that it just doesn't solve that fast. You have to wait for things, And I was like, yeah, That I understand. Wait. You know, and in a sense, for me, waiting is a daily practice. You know, I'm always waiting on God for something or waiting on family for something. And waiting is a very active place. It's not a place of you sit empty, like you don't have something. Waiting is it's a very full place, a very active place for me. To me, that's a practice, you know, waiting. And it still doesn't get at my question. But there's a question hidden in there somewhere, like a thing that I'm struggling with, trying to figure out how. Yeah. Your cat never comes on stream.
No.
No kitty cam. No,
She
nothing.
doesn't like me.
She doesn't like you.
She only likes Colin.
Yeah, cats definitely have favorites.
She hated him for 10 years and now she loves him.
That? Yeah.
Oh, we got one.
Oh, there's one.
Oh.
Yeah, it's bigger.
Can I say something, Elijah, or you just stare straight into the camera? Just motionless.
No.
Oh, great. You know I love you, Elijah, because you try to be serious, and then
He tries to be serious wearing a mask and a clown hat.
Yeah. Gosh. I'm still a little mad about the argument we had in Discord. I was like, dang.
I'm still gonna respond, so it's gonna keep up for a while.
We don't have to do this.
What argument are you guys having on this?
Yeah.
Let's not talk about this.
We have nothing else
Is
to argue
this
about.
the Destiny argument you guys
Yeah.
have?
Look, this is deranged DGG speak. No one else needs to know about this.
Okay.
All right. It's shameful. All right.
For the uninitiated, can we please at least ask?
All right. Okay. We're already talking about Destiny. It's late. All right.
What is this?
You guys can
that.
continue talking about internet politics if you wish. But just for those of us who weren't here in the beginning, we're going to read The Problem of Evil and When Religion Goes Wrong for the next meeting on the 21st of August. I'm going to be shutting down the poll for everything tonight, and then I'll put up a new one for the final book choice tomorrow.
Wait, so by the 21, we'll have a new book? Decision?
No.
Yeah, I guess I'll announce it
Oh.
on there. The new book,
Yeah.
the one that got chosen.
And then we'll have the 21st and then one more meeting and then we'll do the new book.
So
Yeah,
have we finished one vote or two votes?
one vote.
One.
Okay, that's what I thought. It's because I did one vote.
Yeah, so hopefully by the 21st, you guys should still have like a month to get your books, and then read the beginning of it. So.
Okay.
Alrighty then, guys. You can stay on, but I'm heading out. It's been 2 hours. It's been good. It's been great. Trey still,
Bye,
he finally got
Elijah.
there 30 minutes
Great.
after all the navigation, so we're all here, guys.
I'm also going to bounce. So, Jacob, it's your stream.
It is my stream.
It is.
and hopefully Ryan can join us next week, too.
And Jonathan.
And Jonathan.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
Cool.
Have a good one.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
You guys are all leaving?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Are you doing a book follow-up or just a?
Just talk. How did the I bounced into the Catholic stream you had on Friday?
Last night?
Yeah, last night, Emma. How was that?
It was good. Father Eric was back, so we were all like, it was unusually active. So everyone was like, oh, hey, Father Eric's back, and he hasn't been here for 2 months.
Yeah. Father Eric is studying to be a canon lawyer.
Yep.
Could you change?
Oh,
I was gonna. Can we get Jacob in here? And more than half of Trey. There we go.
What?
Hey, Andrew.
How's it going, Emma?
Big man.
Pretty good. How about you?
Pretty good. I got my dog here, so can't
Oh,
be that
good puppy.
Yeah.
Very good puppy.
bad.
she's eating a bone.
No, she's
Or
eating my
just
leg.
eating. Okay. So yes.
Oh, there she goes.
Me and Andrew were hanging out on Sunday or Saturday or someday, and he has this great Baptist preacher impression. He's not gonna whip it out, but I just want to say he does. It's like actually amazing. He didn't do that willingly. I just pretty much just like made him go mad, and his response was to talk like a Baptist preacher.
Is that
Andrew,
the Orthodox Church? I don't think so.
I think you meant Mishneh Torah on repentance, not Mishnah of repentance. And if I may decide to just go through the Mishneh Torah on repentance myself, just to go through it. But that would entail me actually like doing stuff. And there's a lot of stuff I have to do right now.
Oh, Andrew's gone.
There is a lot of stuff.
How are you doing, Emma?
I'm good. Just got back from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. Well, we got back to home yesterday. We spent Saturday night at my parents' house. It was a good time. It was a good trip with all of my in-laws.
All of your in-laws.
All of my in-laws, except Colin's uncle and aunt. But his grandparents, his mom, and his sister.
I can't even imagine somebody claiming to meet all of my family.
I can. You have a big family, I forgot.
I have a very big family.
They're a pretty small wasp family, yeah.
Well,
How big is your family, Jacob?
it'll be WASP, right? Not WASP.
So my mom had
His family's all Protestant.
My mom had 5 sisters. My father has one sister and 3 brothers. And then my grandparents, like their siblings, and those are still cousins that I still know. And so, like, let's put it this way. So I would not be surprised if some of my dad's uncles show up to the Jerusalem conference.
Nice.
That's cool. Yeah. My Nana comes from a big family like that, but we only talk to a couple of them.
You're Catholic, Emma. You're supposed to have a dozen kids already.
I know I'm slacking. It's been 2 years.
But everybody has 12 years.
And you don't already have 4 kids?
Yeah.
So this actually happened in the Hasidic community in Los Angeles. So many Hasidic communities, they get married at 18. Like that's just the thing. You turn 18, you get married. And the dating.
Trey looks like he doesn't approve.
And the dating consists of you spend an hour in public together, and then they ask you, well, what do you think? And you might say, maybe we should go on another date. Or you just get married. But like 3 dates, that's already considered like long-term dating and
taking it real slow.
Yeah. taking it real slow. Yes. So this one couple, the first year of marriage, they had twins.
Oh man.
Second year of marriage, they had triplets.
Oh man. So they did actually have 5 kids in 2 years of marriage.
Yep, at age 20.
Did they like?
God bless them.
No, how do you plan on having twins?
Yeah, you can't plan that.
But I can guarantee you that after the triplets, she probably was using birth control.
Is birth control allowed?
Yeah, what are the Hasidic?
So women are allowed to use birth control if they have a reason why they think they should. And like generally, if you already have a boy and a girl, it's considered kind of okay. But in most Hasidic families, the only birth control they use is they will tend to breastfeed for a full 2 years, and many
Which sometimes works and sometimes
Yeah, I
doesn't.
say, which doesn't guarantee anything.
yeah,
What does that mean?
many women do not ovulate while they're breastfeeding.
That's such a.
You didn't know that?
No, I didn't.
Now
Yeah.
you know.
Don't take it as a definite.
Yeah,
It's more of a.
it can definitely sneak up on you.
No, I'm good. I do know a friend of mine who got a girl pregnant in college.
Mhm.
Now he has a kid. So I've learned my lesson through him, you know?
Make sure you don't date Catholic girls.
She was a Catholic.
Can I tell you one of the worst horror stories in human history?
Sure.
Sure.
I forget this woman's name, but you can find her name. This is a pretty famous story. So this Catholic woman, she goes to she's taking a flight to Israel, and this is in the 80s, and the El Al Airlines does a lot of interviewing people, like asking a lot of questions before they let you onto the thing. And she's like, "Yeah, I'm going to go meet my fiance's family," and they start asking questions about her fiance, and he's Palestinian, and they were in the United. She's from the United Kingdom. She's flying from Heathrow to Lod Airport in Israel, and yeah, she's pregnant, and that's why they're getting married. And they searched her bags and found a bomb. He had deliberately found a Catholic girl to seduce because he figured she would be able to get the bomb onto, if she was pregnant, she would be able to, and didn't know about the bomb, she would be able to get it onto the airplane, and he had packed her bags for her.
That is horrifying.
Yikes. Yep. Yikes.
Yep. I believe he's still alive. I think her last name was Murphy. I think he's still in prison.
Based. I always wanted to write to.
What about her?
No, I know after that story and Catholics and Catholic families, I'm thinking it was really good that it just ended at he's still alive, because I'm thinking he could be many things. She's probably got a big family who would take it very poorly. Yeah.
Maybe.
Your family's not violent, are they, Emma? They're all calm and placid like you. Yeah, I don't think so.
I'm the chill one of my family, and when I left my family, I realized how not chill I was. Like when I went to college, I realized how much energy is just running around all of the time.
Yeah.
I feel bad for the kid. I don't know if she had.
Yeah.
I'm guessing she had the kid, but like, can you imagine?
I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. Like, is she like raising him by herself? Like,
That's not even a question.
They did it.
her? Like, what's going on with that?
I mean, this was in the 80s that this happened, and it was pretty big news. They did it. I think there was like a Lifetime movie or something, and there's been books and stuff. But I also think she changed her name.
Definitely smart.
Yeah.
It would suck to be Charles Manson's kid.
He had a kid.
Yeah, he does.
Oh.
You didn't hear like when those serial killers were really big, there'd be a bunch of women that would just come to like really bad people would come and then just have their children. Which I don't know if you just like being a single parent, I guess you could do.
Serial killers get a lot of fan mail.
Yeah.
I don't understand that. I've never understood it.
Perfect sense.
Haven't you ever heard Jordan Peterson talking about women's sexual fantasies?
Not yet. I try to avoid those topics from certain people that I'm not certain will have good things to say about women in general, let alone.
So the five top sexual fantasies of women: pirates, surgeons. What were the other ones?
Trey's acting him out.
Vampires,
werewolves,
and I think like
CEOs, billionaires. Yeah.
So I have a question then. Seeing as you've just described all of the major characters in most women's romance novels for the last 40 years, which came first, the chicken or the egg?
The argument is usually the novels are based off of the common fantasies. And how the novels are popular.
No, just because they print novels doesn't mean women will buy them if they don't actually view them as
appealing.
Oh, and apparently Amish love stories about Amish guys have been going through the roof.
Had you not heard about like the whole Amish romance thing? Because I just know it is like a joke.
I have not.
Apparently, it's true.
The only thing I know about
I
Amish
believe it's
romance
true.
stories is that before her death at 90 years old, they were my mother's favorite stories. She had read every one of however many series of Amish love stories. And I was like, no, what's the deal with Amish love stories?
Yeah. I know they're so prevalent as to be like a joke, but I don't get why.
Okay, me either.
Because
The
Amish
only
are capable.
Did you hear that?
Oh yeah,
Because Amish women are capable?
Amish guys are capable.
Amish guys are capable. So it's basically the whole you want a man who can take charge of things idea.
Or at least who can actually do things. I don't know. The only romance books I've ever read are Bridgerton. So.
Or what?
The Bridgerton series after the TV show. I mean, the books came before the Netflix show. The show is based on them.
Yeah, I haven't heard of it, but I don't have Netflix.
I've never.
It's like spicy Jane Austen.
What is a woman?
I've read Jane Austen.
I guess it was the summer reading for my siblings' high school because my brother texted me at like midnight one day. Something about like he just finished Sense and Sensibility, and Willoughby is a terrible person, not because he actually does anything like bad, but because he's self-centered in a way that negatively affects everyone around him. I was like, that's a good insight for a 16-year-old to have reading Sense and Sensibility. Good job, bud.
You say so.
Okay, Emma, I have a Catholic question.
Okay. I will
what do
do
you
my best.
What do you think's gonna happen with the German synod?
Ooh.
I don't know.
What
Is-
can
What?
what can happen?
What can they could all get excommunicated.
Really?
Theoretically, that could happen. Is it probable? No, not at all.
Okay.
Can the Pope ask for all the bishops to resign, and would they have to?
Probably. I don't. They'd probably have to. I mean, I'm pretty sure he could fire them without excommunicating them. Although, obviously, all of these questions are better put to Father Eric.
Yeah, Father Eric is the canon lawyer, but I'm not sure that the Pope can actually fire a bishop.
He could. I mean, he's the one who assigns them everywhere, so he could unassign them.
I guess.
But he would have to make a whole bunch of new bishops real fast.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like you just may have another Protestantism. You know what I mean?
Well, the Germans
Might
are
be.
known for inventing Protestantism.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Andrew, the German Synod is a group of bishops in Germany and I think also Belgium who got together and did this whole like small council type thing, which basically ended in a vote that homosexuality should be okay.
And a bunch of other stuff, right? They got woman priests now, right?
And probably a bunch of other stuff. I cannot stress enough how much I have not been following this because I don't want to know. Because I trust God to sort it all out. And me freaking out about it in the meantime accomplishes nothing but bad things for my own life.
Got it. Amen. I should think like that.
So how's the TLC Bible coming along?
Less good than my Greek practice, but my Greek practice is actually coming along. So I will probably work on that in the next couple of weeks, along with getting set up for teaching again. Because now that I'm back from vacation, it's like a crap. This semester starts in like 3 weeks.
Well, I'm telling you, a dissertation on a lolcat's translation of the Bible.
It could go places.
I'm telling you.
I don't know if I like them, but it could go places.
You could present it at all kinds of places.
I could, but I don't think Hillsdale would appreciate it.
Yeah, Hillsdale probably wouldn't, but
My goal is to teach at Hillsdale, so
Princeton, Harvard, Yale,
no, I don't want to teach at those places though.
Oxford,
Not worth it.
Cambridge.
Not worth it.
What if this is part of God's plan for your life? Sorry.
Then it'll happen, and I'll deal with it then.
The Pontifical University in somewhere.
I would rather teach at a small liberal arts school, preferably Catholic or Hillsdale, which is going to become Catholic eventually. Let's be real. We're just quietly taking Hillsdale over.
I don't mind if you take over Hillsdale. Just as long as you don't turn it into a woke Jesuit hellhole.
No.
Why are Jesuits woke? I don't get that. Like,
Yeah, I don't
Those
either.
aren't the kind no one really gets
Wait,
it.
what? I'm still trying to figure out the term woke without adding in woke Jesuits. What?
So,
Let's
woke,
skip.
woke just
skip.
means whatever Jacob doesn't like.
Well, that I was getting.
Yeah, that's
I will use my skip card. Okay.
bye, Andrew.
Okay, if we don't have anything substantive to say, I will probably end the stream sometime soon.
Yeah, I should probably head out.
Well, it is 11:30. So, I have canceled my travel plans, by the way, for September.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, the fires of Highway, whatever, I forget the name of it, versus the fires of digging 3,000 plus into savings. Yes. A few words of wisdom from unmentioned people who like, being right. And I have canceled it based on going, yeah. I'm going to Israel in February. I know where the $3,000 I have to spend would go.
You're coming, Sandy? No way.
Yeah.
That'd be good.
That's why I went to Chino. I've never planned something. It's the first time ever in my life that I even used an agent to help plan travel plans. Super chicken of doing the whole thing. So I needed a dry run, and I also wanted to meet you guys. So yeah.
Mo tells me he has everything under control, and I am trusting him like the idiot that I am.
Yeah, just let me know. I'll buy the tickets.
He has everything under control.
That's what he says. He says he's going to make an announcement, and I'm going to be very pleased. But I have zero idea what's going on.
I went to go back to the beginning of our earlier conversation on interpretation. And so in what respect does a very hot-tempered Latino CRC Reformed person have an Israel trip under control?
Well, he's the executive director of the Joyful Mother of Children Foundation.
That's the logical answer. I liked Emma's response. Yeah.
Mo is pretty sick.
Mo's a nice guy.
Yeah.
Mo is an absolute.
CW likes him, so if CW likes him, he can't be a bad guy.
I like him. I've just heard a few of his subtle comments in voices through the Reformed channel. So yeah, which I'm avoiding.
Yeah, well, he apparently preached at the Abide
Did he really?
conference they had. Yeah.
Oh, you know what? And I haven't. Yeah, I'll go check that out.
Nice.
Yeah, me and my entire probably woke family, who all lean on the affirming side of all of the ugliness over at the church things, and I've had a couple of really good conversations with some Abide people, and I'm like,
So it seems like Tim has a Bible study going.
oh, what?
Or I think he wants to do
Yeah,
an
what?
interview.
Oh, do we go check it out?
Well, he didn't post it in his
On his channel?
Discord,
No, that's not.
so
That's not his channel. That's not what he's doing.
Oh, okay. So, okay.
We have an
And-
interview to get.
Yeah, okay. I am going to end this stream.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
people.
Yep.
Nice
Good night.
meeting everybody.
Glad to see you
Nice.
guys. Good.